Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, and today we're here with Joe Roets, who is the founder of DragonChain and Den.Social. We're mainly going to be focusing on Den.Social today. It is a very innovative new take on blockchain social. As most of you know, I've been exploring and looking at just a plethora of different platforms, and I think this is a very innovative new take. So we're going to dive into, all the caveats of Den.Social and dive into all that today. But before we get into that, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thanks a bunch for having me. It's I love talking about this. So
awesome. Before we do get into everything, though, for people who don't know who you are, can you just give a little bit of a background about yourself?
Sure. I'm primarily a software architect. I've been doing that for over 25 years, and I love to focus on big systems and making things scalable and making them work better.
Yeah, awesome. And how did you originally get into crypto and blockchain?
I had a group where I had a small company that did consulting work primarily for the federal government, but we did do a lot of commercial things as well. And one of my guys brought in the Satoshi white paper to the group and said, we should look at this. This is really interesting. A lot of buzz about this, and this was in middle to late 2010, somewhere around there.
Wow.
And so I looked at it on the weekend as promised, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is. Everything in here is known, but the way it's arranged is amazing and different. And so we started, which is what we would do with new tech in this group. We started just hitting it from every angle. How could we use it here? How could we use it there? Nothing is too stupid to try type activity. And we built out a lot of different things.
And when did you eventually get to the point where you started DragonChain?
So in that. As an architect, in that process, my whole goal was, how can a business leverage this? And, what are the issues? What are the roadblocks? Scalability one, cost another, security another, that a lot of companies are not going to put all their data on a blockchain, as an example.
Yeah.
And to tackle all of those as a software architect, that was my whole goal. And so I went through, for years, working through all the details and looking for opportunities to employ these ideas. And, I worked for a few startups. I did some stuff that, not too notable for Coinbase. I did some work for Overstock in those early days because they had some interesting angles. But it seemed that everywhere that I was working, that there was very much it was too niche that I couldn't actually try out some of these bigger scalability ideas. I couldn't, there were lots of things that I couldn't try out. And so Disney called in 2014, offered a position in Seattle. So they moved my family up to Seattle and started building what became DragonChain. It was originally the Disney private blockchain platform. And starting in 2014, we were building that at Disney, adding all the big components through 2015 and 2016, and we finally open sourced it in 2016. Wow. And that's when the whole thing rolled out to the public.
Awesome. And then at what point did Den.Social become a part of that mix?
We were in conversations in one of our Telegram groups, right?
Okay.
And anybody who's in crypto, and sometimes there are other industries like this, knows that it's a very difficult and sometimes very negative environment in the social space. On Twitter, in Reddit, on Telegram, and sometimes it's negative speak, right? But a lot of times it's people impersonating you. We had a public Slack for quite a while that we had to shut down entirely because no matter what we paid for, no matter what services we plugged in, people were still able to impersonate me and anybody else on the team, and they would come in and they would try to get people to say to send money, right? Oh, send your Ethereum here, so that it's the typical, especially back then, crypto scam where somebody says, oh, there's a new token sale, send your money here, and they'll get tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, usually. And it was really funny. They would do that in our group, and we had been educating the community since we were open source, before there were any tokens involved, to be wary. And so it was always a beautiful thing, because they would do it when the team here in Seattle was asleep, and someone else in the group would at least tell everyone, don't send that. It would have been a signed message if that was really Joe, so on and so on.
Yeah.
And so in conversations about that, I brought up, wouldn't it be great if we had a crypto aware, not just a blockchain platform, but a crypto aware platform where we could employ some of what we're already employing for security inside of our network into the social platform, right? So that we would know that really is Jim. We would know that this person, although they are new, they have a loyalty score inside of our network that is so high that I can at least, trust them to some reasonable level, or maybe give them better access to make a comment or a post or something in a certain group. So that was where it kind of started. And we had some early volunteers from the community to help, work it out. And so we started building it out. I hired someone from a past company that I had known for years to basically begin it and, really get a good foundation for the framework. And we've made some really good progress since then.
Awesome. Yeah. So for people who really have no idea what DragonChain is or what Den.Social is, do you just want to kind of walk them through that?
Sure. DragonChain itself is a blockchain platform with smart contracts that is hybrid. And when I say hybrid, it separates the data payload, the actual information, from the proof. So what it does is it allows a company or an organization to use the blockchain in ways that they wouldn't be able to in the more traditional sense, like on Ethereum or something, where you can't put a patient's medical data on Ethereum. But with DragonChain, you can put it on chain, and yet all of the data that is on DragonChain is secured through DragonNet itself, through multiple context layers, but in the end is secured to Ethereum and Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic and any other interchain that we're currently running. And the beauty there is that you have a measurable proof. So when the patient comes and you present the information of their past history or whatever else, they know that it's not modified. The doctor knows that it's not modified. If it's financial records, the same. That anybody who's looking at the data knows this is not modified from that date. And so that's what we do generically, and we apply it to fintech. We apply it to social, obviously. We apply it to healthcare data. We apply it to anything under the sun. So it's an interesting thing, and that's what DragonChain is. And it's again, it was created at Disney, launched out of it. We've commercialized it on the outside, and it's extremely scalable. We could go into I could go for hours about all of the differentiators and capabilities, but we have interop at its core, and from the beginning, we have scalable systems that have been proven to be scalable over long periods of time, and we have we're the only blockchain with measurable proof. That is, I can show you a piece of data and give you proof that it isn't changed and that it was sourced, whatever date that the transaction was, with tens or hundreds or billions of dollars worth of energy securing that data. So that's DragonChain. Um, Den.Social, should I give the high level of that, or should we drill in somehow?
Yeah, no, yeah. Let's go into Den.Social first. But I will just say, like, I think that's really awesome what DragonChain is and what it's meant to do, and I think that's really interesting that it works with a bunch of other chains to secure that information.
Right. That's the magic, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's all software magic. But anyway, and for Den, I mean, Den, the primary is to apply those same capabilities to a social network, and that's both for the archival side, proof that this is really what somebody said, the things that are not necessarily the most important, but tying them to incentives and behavioral processes. So one way or another, we had a series of goals. The primary goal above all others is to source the best content for any user's eyeballs sooner than any other platform. Like that's the general high level goal that we are trying to get to. So how do you attract people to bring good content in, to create good content, and to do it efficiently, to bring it in first before they take it to some other outlet. And the way is to reward it, right? And to reward it in a competitive environment. So it's a marketplace where you're competing to produce the best content if you're a content creator. The question then becomes, how do you evaluate, how do you determine a scoring system? How do I decide how to reward this content 10 points and that content 100 points, right? That you need what amounts to an evaluation market, right? And we tend to call it a prediction market because you are basically splitting content up into communities. Each of these communities you can kind of think of like a subreddit, where here's a community that has a certain culture. They tend to have inside jokes. They have various ways that they standardize posts or replies, or their own language sometimes, right? So inside of that culture, you want the people in that culture to be the ones evaluating, or at least some portion of the population of that culture can evaluate to say this content is amazing, right? It's either sourced well, it's from a reputable source, it's thorough, it's unique, there's something about it, whatever they deem appropriate. It could be that it's exciting info, who knows? But that info, I can now evaluate up or down. Is this good content? Is it bad content? And that's pretty normal. That's like Reddit, right? But with Den, you have scarcity. And the scarcity is an interesting angle because there were, and when you get into token economy design, you tend to go into rabbit holes in certain areas where we know, okay, there's an expected or observed behavior, where in this case, there's an expected behavior. If I have a token for scarcity, I have all types of issues with that. How do I get people the tokens without having to force them to buy it, in which case my adoption is going to be nil? How do I grant them some yet retain some scarcity and tie it to a token that would be used as an award? And so the solution that Den provided and has been tested pretty thoroughly is that there is a primary value token in the entire economy, which is Matter. Okay, and there's some interesting plays on why it's called Matter and everything else. I can get into that later, but Matter is the token that is tradable outside of Den, in a decentralized exchanges and wherever else somebody might want to trade it, but it has a market value, right? Matter is mined daily, and there's only 1,000 new Matter are mined every day. There's a smart contract that actually controls the outflow, and there's an interaction with Den that awards the the amounts that every user gets based upon their activities. And that 1,000 a day is going to go on for the next 1,500 years to the token supply, right? And so there's a built-in scarcity of that token, and we didn't do any pre-mine. We literally turned on the system and started mining matter back in time before the token existed. We just created and just released the full external token, and every action that you do, every action you take, whether it's a post, a reply, a vote, or anything else on Den, is placed on chain. So it's on DragonChain, on Den's own blockchain, and every transaction is secured all the way up, like we described before, to Bitcoin and Ethereum. So one way or another, people have balances of matter. A new user has 0. I mean, you joined recently and you had 0 matter, and in fact, I have a note to go and try to collect more info from new users as to how quickly they built up a balance of matter so that they could do more of the things possible in the system, right?
Yeah.
We generally made it so that when you start, you have 24 energy. You have 0 matter. So this is where, and this gets a little bit hard to explain, but when you see it, it makes sense. That if you have no matter at all, you get 24 energy. And if you use that energy, it comes back, right? But it only comes back 1 energy per hour until you cap out at 24. Okay? So if I have 0 matter, I'm a new person, I can come in and I can spend my energy how I want. I could vote on posts or replies. I don't have a lot of energy though, so I can vote 24. Or I can make a few posts, or I can make a few replies, right? And replies cost a little less energy than posts, right? Yeah, posting with an image costs a little more than posting without an image, things like that, right? But I have a set amount of energy to attenuate my activity before I completely understand the system, right? So I can kind of get going, and we tend to tell people it's a good practice to go in and make a good, thorough post in the hello world, introduce yourself layer, right? Where it literally is, here's who I am, here's why I'm here, what I'm interested in, that people can, have a conversation and, maybe even follow me if I'm, somebody that's interesting, or if I said something funny, right? And from that, we all of the existing users that have a lot of matter tend to, reply in there. There's some guys that are amazing at giving, pointing to the great introductory posts, your videos, of other people that are describing how to use the system and how to, best benefit from your use of the system. And so, and we tend to throw a lot of energy into that, which means they're going to get some matter on day one, right? So it's a beautiful thing. So now they'll get into the system. Now, the other side of it is that if you have a matter balance, that you get additional energy, right? And it comes at 1/24th of your total matter balance per hour until you cap out at your matter balance plus 24. Right? And it's really hard to describe, but what it amounts to is the free side always works. You always will get 24 back after a 24-hour period, whether you have matter or not. But if you have matter, it's going to be you're going to get more energy, and it's going to be basically your matter balance at the end of a day. So if you don't do anything for a day, you come back, you're going to have your matter balance plus 24 energy, and now you can do other things. And the reason all that matters for the scarcity is because we allow, I mentioned the evaluation being an up or down, which is very typical and simple and understandable, very much like Reddit. But we have an added feature to that where you can bet on your evaluation. So if you vote it up, you say this is good content, generally good content, and it's a it passes the bar, but maybe it's not the greatest content ever. So maybe you put in, and maybe you have, let's say you have 1,000 energy, right? You built up or bought or something enough matter to have 1,000 energy. So you can say, okay, in my whole day, I think this is probably worth 50 or 60 or something in that range of energy. So I'm going to click up. And right now the interface is that I'm going to click up multiple times, and it goes by Fibonacci sequence up to a certain value that is in the range of what I want. And I wait, and then a spinner goes, and that energy is applied to that content. And now I have my vote and my bet in for that prediction market. And basically, the more consensus that content gets from the community, they're the only ones that can weigh in on this if you're a subscriber to that community, that the more consensus I get, the more my energy will be applicable. That is, if I'm the only one voting, then the actual energy value when the whole scoring, the whole market evaluates at the end of the day, that I'll get, it's like a 1% or somewhere maybe less of however much energy I put in counts, right? That it basically is blown, So there's a disincentive to just throwing energy at stuff, even if you're a whale, because you're just blowing it. You're not actually getting the value from it. And yet if I get, a few dozen people who all in the community say, yes, that's good content, even if they only put one vote up each, they don't put any bet in it because maybe it wasn't the best ever. My 100 or 50 energy that I put in counts for 50 energy now when evaluated against all the other content on the system. So consensus is huge. Negative consensus is huge because if you vote against the consensus of that community, it will count against your daily matter output. And so the reason we do that is because the consensus, what we would call the qualified score, maybe of that content, is weighed against everything else, right? And that, although that sets what I get rewarded out of a pool for evaluators, if I'm a voter, that very number or those very metrics are what provide the competitive advantage to content itself. So the content that gets the most consensus and the most energy applied gets the most proportion of the mining for that day, right? So it's this evaluation system that is a marketplace that dictates the actual value of the content that the system is looking at, right? So that's the content and evaluation side of everything. The other side, the other major side of it, is that we have also two other tokens that manage the communities themselves. One of which is lore, and lore itself is lair ownership rights. So a community, because we're all dragons and everything else, a community is a lair, LAIR, and the lair ownership rights give you utility based upon communities. That is, you can bring lore in and create a new lair if you have your own brand or want to do something like that. You can bring lore into the system and help us evaluate the next community layers to be created. And we've gone through the very first real lore layer creation process last month. We're about to have another one in a few weeks here. That it's a very interesting process because there's a we're still growing our user adoption, and we don't want 1 million layers. We don't want 1 million communities with no activity at all. We literally want to make those communities scarce so that, and it'll be less and less scarce over time, but so that people will have a competitive reason to help us evaluate which ones should be added next, right? And it's worked amazingly well for almost a year now, where most of our lairs are co-owned by users on the system. And the ownership is held in what we call lot, which is a lair ownership token. That lot is literally an NFT. The lot contract on Ethereum holds lore locked in for every lot NFT issued, right? So if you're holding ownership, let's say one lot of the cryptocurrency layer, let's say, you own one piece of however many there are. It's an NFT. You can take it. You can sell it on OpenSea. You could give it to your buddy. You could give it to your own community. You could do anything you want with it. It's an NFT. And yet that, when you claim it in the system, when the system knows this is held by you in that address, you get a cut of all of the activity going on in that layer, right? So every vote inside the layer, a portion of that vote goes to the layer owners, right? So it's a really good way to passive income in a hybrid, decentralized way. So you have the lot, you can trade them, and the beauty is we don't have all of this infrastructure in yet, but there's going to be layer metrics so that you'll be able to see, both. I expect in a leaderboard or something, but very much at the head of the layer itself, that you'll be able to look at its average matter output, things like that. So you can know, if I had 5% of that layer, I could expect this much over time. And the reason we want that is because all of the owners of those layers are incentivized to participate and to bring content and to bring conversations in, right, that are quality. So, and it's a competition to get the best content earliest, and so on. And part of deciding where you might want to have ownership is, and what you think, which subjects or which communities might be the most active and provide the most valuable content for the most people, right? That those are the ones you want to own.
Yeah, and I mean it's complex, but it was beautifully explained. I'll definitely be doing a tutorial / guide on Den very soon, and kind of just break down everything and go through it with a screen share so it clicks a little bit. But yeah, no, that was beautifully explained, and I really like all these different things that you guys are doing. Interestingly enough, I've seen maybe 3 other platforms attempt community ownership, and I haven't seen it done very successfully. So I think you guys are kind of role models in this space right now for showing the correct way to do it.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And another thing that I think is also like really important is that when I look at Den, I would say it's most similar, not that it's, apples to apples, but it's most similar to the ecosystem of Hive / Steam. But I think it's much better in many ways because, for example, one big thing for me is liquidity, right? If I have to lock up my Hive for 13 weeks, well, we could have, a crazy bull run in the next 13 weeks, and that could be,
right,
really important. Whereas with Matter, it's completely liquid. I'm getting my NRG, but if I do need to pull out and do something, I could do that, and then I could get more Matter and come right back in. And I think that's also that's really, really important. Another thing is KYC. Do you guys have any potential plans for KYC, whether it's regulatory or it's something that you want to do for dealing with spam or scams or whatever it happens to be?
Yeah, we have let's see here. And I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. We have a plan to do, in the very least, some features that would be related to identity protection that would be very much focused on, if you do this, it will keep anyone from impersonating you. So if you're head of a company or someone that that you have to be careful about that. We're going to offer you features that, frankly, the other networks should already. They don't. And I'm talking about the traditional ones. Like Twitter should have something like this already. Yeah. We've even talked to them about it, and they didn't understand. But that very much around that. We have some really interesting, if people were involved in the very, very early alpha stage of what we were building, every user had a flag, which was deterministically generated based upon various parts of your profile, including your own address, right? In a way that you couldn't dox someone, but there's a very limited way that they could change their flag, right? Which is beautiful. That once I know that's Scott's flag, at a glance, I don't have to check everything. Now, if Scott's asking me to send him money, maybe I go and I check the signature of the post, right? But if Scott's just saying something, then I was like, okay, that's the flag. That's Scott's flag. And so it ends up being something that we know we're going to provide. That we have a platform at DragonChain that was built, purpose built to do some very interesting things with decentralized identity. We spun it off. It's now with a new entity that's really expanding the capabilities. But we will have the ability, and one of the key features that I personally really want to see added is an ability to tie it to, for crypto projects, something with an algorithm around token holding, that is like what DragonChain uses for time. We have a system called Time that rewards people in various ways for holding the tokens longer in a single wallet. And there are security reasons. There are a whole bunch of really interesting things. I'd like to tie that in, right? We have the beginnings of it built. We just haven't integrated it fully. But I always very much want to see an ability for a controlled, and the semantics, I don't know, controlled or hybrid anonymous account feature, where you could create multiple anonymous accounts, but they would be limited, and they would be limited economically. That having one at a time would be affordable for everyone, pretty much, right? Having two would get to be expensive. Having 3 or 4, let alone 100, becomes unattainable, right? That you want some scale where it's very expensive if somebody wants to play around like that with bots, right?
Yeah.
However, owning that anonymous identity, the reason that it matters is you can tie it to what we would call derived identity factors, things that don't dox you, but things that prove, things like I'm going to establish that as of this date, you can look at my anonymous account and see that I have a 3-star rating within your layer, right? And that's what I want captured inside of that anonymous account, so I can act in a way anonymously, yet that I'm not a bad actor, right? And so there are various things like that we can do, and then to allow the layers to decide, this layer is anonymous only, this layer is identified only, or this layer is open to a mix, right? Because then you can really control it, and there are cases where it would actually be a better community if everyone was anonymous, right? So we're wanting to build that type of capability in as well. I mean, identity is a very, very big part of what we have planned, and we've had to hold off on a couple of things until some pieces are ready on in that other entity. But a big part of it will be that, and then that we want in the end, and I don't know whether this will be configurable or not, but I want every single message and reply to be signed by the actual end user. Right now it's signed by the system, it's signed by the node, it's on chain obviously, but we want your account, whether you're on mobile or browser, to without you having any technical background, to be cryptographically signed, tied to that identity, so that it's just a more secure and safe thing. We also have chats being built out right now. We're going to do some the first features related to direct message and chat will be layer focused, and just because the UI is faster to build out. And the same thing there, that when it goes out at first, it'll be all on chain, but in a later phase, in a later pass, it's all going to be end-to-end encrypted. So
awesome.
All that stuff is there.
Yeah. I guess that does tell me a lot, and like that's really good to know. But more specifically, I guess my question was, will you ever have some sort of like forced ID KYC? Like, will I ever be required to send my license in to whether a third party or whatever to verify that I'm a real person? Will there ever be some sort of requirement or restriction based around KYC?
Not that I know of right now, right? I mean, we're in the U.S., so I have no idea. But the intent right now is all of the tokenization pieces are decentralized, so you're responsible for various things. I know that we'll probably have things in there where you will have to acknowledge, whatever legal terms. We already have the base set, but there, I imagine as things develop, especially with new features that, I know that we're going to, like I want to be able to sell lore inside the system, that there will probably be some parameters around that I don't know right now if they would require an actual KYC or not. But they might, because it's financial. But, early days, we're trying to stay away from as much as possible to avoid needing to do too much like that. Mm-hmm. And if we did anything like it too, I would assume across the board, I would assume that it would all be, a choice thing. There might be some things you can't do. Maybe if we do that, that would be, at least as a designer, that's how I would describe it. Yeah. That if something pops up and says, "Hey, Joe, you have to do this from now on," then I'll have to say, "Oh, okay, well," then I'll have to say, "Okay, if people do this one little thing that requires that, then they have to do that." Yeah. But they can do everything else around it, so they might be missing a little feature or something.
Sure. But, yeah, no, that's good to know, just because in my experience with reviewing platforms, one of the biggest, I guess, concerns that a lot of people have is, do I have to KYC in order to access my funds? And that's always a big concern. And there aren't many platforms that have issues with this, but I know of a few, and I won't throw any shade on them. But there's a lot of like complaints and issues with KYC being a requirement. And even worse, so if you have to pay to KYC, which I think is a little, sketchy, but yeah, so I'm glad to know that you guys don't have any plans for that, at least. So, and I'm sure a lot of people watching will be relieved and definitely appreciate that. So, how did Den.Social get its name originally?
Gosh, we went through a few different, and I will say, there was, probably the part of the history began with a tweet. We knew we were already going to work on some of this. We were talking about some of the potential for names, and we knew a lot of what we did, especially back then, was very dragon related. I mean, we have a lot of other systems. It's just a convenient naming source. And so we were thinking, okay, what are places where dragons live? What are, various things tie in. And we had, if you remember, Kanye West, and this is politics, so apologies here, but Kanye West had a series, this tweet storm around this time, where he was calling out dragon energy. I have dragon energy, all this other stuff, right? Yeah. And if you remember that, so an unnamed intern retweeted one of Kanye's posts, and in fact, I don't have the mug. I have a mug with it on there, but it was dragon energy equals love, right? And it was this thing, and it turned into people hated it. We joked that we fired the intern. It's just hilarious stuff, right? But it was one of the most repeated and retweeted tweets that DragonChain official account has ever made. So it was funny, and given that it was dragon energy, we considered for a while to have the main token energy, and then to have either the external token or a flip side to be love, right? Just because it was funny, and to troll the people that hated it, because I love to troll people that would be trolls on Twitter, right? So one way or another, that was that, and instead we went with energy and matter, we had a period where we considered having a concept of dark matter even and things like that, just to keep some level in there. But it ended up being that, energy and matter were a piece of that. That a lair is a place, right? It's a place that animals or people or dragons would go and live together, right? And den being the bigger part of it, and that we call users denizens. And it's funny because when we were even looking for the proper Twitter account handle, Real Denizens was there, and we're like, holy crap! I mean, denizens literally spells out what the people in a place are called, right? And whoever is occupying or residing in that place, they're a denizen. And so it came from there. And Den.Social was available as a URL, as a domain. And that was pretty much it. And then the lore and the lot are somewhat tied as well, because lore has more than one meaning itself. Yeah. And that's kind of it. It all fits in that. There's more to be named too. So we're still constantly looking for other stuff to call things. So
yeah. So we should expect some more dragon-esque terms.
Probably.
Yeah. So we've talked about lore, matter, energy. Do you want to dive a little bit deeper into like the tokenomics for energy and matter? Like, why exactly is matter so scarce? Like, what is some of the like thought process behind having a scarce token, whereas I don't know of any other projects that have a scarce token for social platforms? So it is a very unique take. So I'm curious as to why you guys wanted to go with the scarcity model.
It helped us with deciding whether or not we wanted to do halving over time, right? Things like that are very typical, because the curve of adoption and the curve of value, you have to take those two things into account. So you have to expect right now, I don't know what matter's priced at today, right? Last I looked, it was 70 cents, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's what I saw last.
So you have to look at it. The amount of value being created on Den, in content value. And there's always, and there will always be content that is not original, or content that is not maybe what you or I might consider great content. But you have to consider right now at that price, and I don't want to get into token price and everything else, but when you model something like this, you have to think about it in terms of the price should be higher than 70 cents, because that means right now only $700 per day is spent by the system on these activities, on producing good content, right? Producing and curating or evaluating good content. $700 is remarkably low. And I would say, although it's not, it's still a smaller user base. It is there are only, I don't know, probably 50 lairs, something like that. That, probably a few thousand users. I don't know what the latest count is, right? That's an extremely efficient system, that we're actually getting reasonable quality content that, it's hard to even keep up with because there's enough of it. We have areas to improve, obviously, but for $700, that's really pretty good.
Yeah, and I will just say real quick that some of the platforms that are very well set up and like much further along than Den in terms of adoption and how long they've been around, they're not even doing $700 a day, right? So I want to make sure that's known. I won't specifically name any projects because I'm not throwing shade, and it's not like that's bad if they're more or less, but I think it's important to note that there are projects that give out a lot less than that, that have, a lot more people using them. So there's definitely an opportunity here. And I'll say that there was a project, I think it was last year, Narrative, that raised $5 million, and then they went bankrupt after a year, but they only gave away $1,500 over the whole year in rewards. So $700 a day is quite substantial compared to $1,500 for 365 days.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have known that. That's really
yeah,
good.
yeah, and I've seen this, on so many different platforms. So yeah, absolutely, $700 a day is. You say it's low, but from my perspective, that's actually very, very reasonable.
It's going to have to go up if the system continues working and we don't have any major issues. It has to be. It'll develop more than that because as the crowd grows or the adoption grows, that is. The interesting part to that too is, there is a weakness right now where matter utility is primarily to, there are 2 points of utility currently active, which one is generating energy, right? Mm-hmm. The second is that and it's maybe grouped, you could count this as 3. There is a matter use pool for rewards that the more matter you hold, the more you get in that pool. And there's more to that I'll cover in a second here. And then there's an energy use. So the more efficient you are at evaluating, and when you become a whale, it becomes really hard, right? Because when you become a whale, you have to make decisions, and you have a lot more energy to spend in a day, right? But it's a good thing because it can help tune you to spread it a little more, right? Mm-hmm. Which is helpful as well to the system. And the more efficient you are, the more you'll get, right? So it's a really good system in the end, balanced, very well balanced. But we're about to add one of the primary utilities for matter that is, frankly, it's a little more business related, or at least it's a little more creator related than anything else.
I'm assuming it's boosting?
Yeah, it's boosting. So it is basically the ability to... because it's my own content, and let's say I'm in a very active lair, so there's a lot of competition in this lair, so I can boost my content to guarantee that it gets more eyeballs throughout more of the day, so on, right? And with that boost, and there are 2 different types of boosts, but with the in what we call the internal, again we potentially need better names for internal versus external, but for the internal boost, I'm boosting it inside of the community to get eyeballs on it, for people to evaluate it. The more people see it, the more we'll evaluate it. And if I get a good evaluation that this content is appropriate for the community, is good content, so on, I will get back 85% of what I boost with. The 15% goes to the lair and to Den itself as fees, and that comes no matter how it performs. But the performance, a good performance will come back to me, and a bad performance will go into a pool for, I think it's the DeFi side. There are a couple of things that we're going to figure out where that goes. But the matter that I might lose in a boost will go to a different pool to reward that as it makes sense. Now, an external boost is interesting because it is a referral engagement pool boost. That is basically that currently, I will tell you right now, live on the site, there is I believe it's a 2.5% pool. So it's 25 matter every day is pooled for site-wide referrals. That is, if you share any post inside of the system to Twitter, to Facebook, to your friends and email, whatever, that every time you get a click on that, and it's, it does do a few identity check, or not identity checks. It does do a few checks to make sure you're not a bot. But generally, any click that you get on that is thrown in there, and you get a proportional reward for that day out of that pool. Well, this matter boost lets you do that on any post, and with much accent, that I can say, this is a really good post, and I really want it to get out there. Den doesn't have advertising, right? Den only has this, what we call advertising alternative, which is this boosting. That on the one side, if you're putting content inside a Den and you're boosting it, the cost of your doing that is going to be directly related to the value of that content as evaluated within that community, right? So we consider any, I think it's even in a white paper, that any appropriately targeted advertisement is not really an advertisement. It is just really good content, right? So if I can get you something that you want to know, it's not an ad, right?
Yeah.
And on the other side, the external boost, it basically takes, you can't get any of this back, but let's say you put that same 50 matter, or let's say it's $50 worth of matter, that now people will be rewarded proportionally for sharing that post outside of Den, right? So we're basically pushing the advertisement to other platforms. And that's going to lead to, that's going to be something that people will want to go buy matter, bring into the system, and put stuff into appropriate layers to, to message outward, whether it's, sometimes it's going to be an advertisement, other times it might be an announcement, just something you want eyeballs on.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's gonna be a big deal.
Yeah, no, I think that's really innovative, because you're bringing more people to Den, so that's great for Den. I'm gonna get more viewers, and yeah, just more people are coming into the system this way. I haven't seen any other platforms do that. Obviously, there's a lot of platforms that have the internal boosting, which I assume will probably be similar. But yeah, the external boosting, I think that's really, really interesting. And I'm a big, I'm big on boosting on platforms, so I'm definitely going to be testing this out, and I'll definitely be trying this, because yeah, I think that's really exciting and a really important part of the ecosystem of a blockchain social platform is having that advertising component, and I think you guys definitely did it right. So that's really awesome. Cool. So how decentralized is Den? And I guess maybe if you were to throw it on like a 0 to 10, and then maybe just like break it down a little bit.
Yeah. So the tokens, fully decentralized with some hybrid potential that, we allow some things that are purely on chain and are centralized to save you Ethereum fees. You can time when you want to pull tokens out, right? Yeah. You pay the fees based upon the current situation in the network. So that's fully decentralized. The governance is fully decentralized, and it's somewhat the same, where you can hold your lot inside the system, but it's still signed to, with proof you own the address, everything else. But you can also hold them outside the system. Like, say right now, in fact, the first place we rolled out the real governance to was, and it's still the first phase, was the governance layer. So for every year, so this is an interesting thing. Den doesn't have a CEO. Okay, it has what we call trying to remember the exact title of it, but it's basically a governance body. It's a board for governance of the algorithms and features, right? So the intent of this is to avoid the situation in the future where someone like me, who's leading the business, or somebody else would make a rash decision based upon some thing they're wanting, or some shareholder question, or who knows what, right? That disrupts or removes value from the existing community that pretty much built the system, right? And so for that, we basically gave the entity Den 20 votes, and we gave people who provide liquidity to lore ETH 20 votes. And people who provided liquidity to Matter ETH, 20 votes. And so in the end, our goal was to, within the first year, get at least the majority of votes in the community side, right? So we're influential. I tend to, talk through, because it's a technical thing, I tend to talk through, here's what we can build. Like, someone will propose something that maybe isn't actually doable or might be very expensive. I can say, well, we can't do that exactly, but we could do this, which would answer the same question. And now we can all vote on it, and now we can prioritize. And we're working still on, I really want to get a standard way to allow the governance layer, the owners there, to help us prioritize, as well as, where we could actually assign, okay, it's going to cost us about this many points and we only have this many points per week to work on, what's the order of things we want built. So that'll come too, and we're going to have a built-in interface for voting. Right now, we send people out to MyCrypto to use MetaMask or their hardware wallet to vote. And they bring back a signed message, and that's how the votes are. So that I would consider decentralized to the owners, right? That's I don't know how you would describe that, but it's a person-based, individual, user-based decentralization with the tokens and proofs fully decentralized. But the important part probably for the answer is the content. And so right now the content is centralized. It's a hybrid system, but it is on blockchain. So, and this is very much a key factor of why this is so scalable, that the content's centralized. And yes, we do have disaster recovery, we have backups, and we do have some other plans that I'll cover here in a second on furthering the value of this. But it is decentralized, but the proofs, that is, every single action has a proof that comes with it, whether it's a vote or a post or a reply. And those go all the way up through DragonNet, 5 levels, including Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic right now. So you have this pretty massive amount of proof that someone did make that post or did do that thing. And all of those proofs are stored along with the mining info that happens daily, which also runs in a centralized platform, right? But in the end, our goal is to have, right now we have public layers, we have community-owned layers, and we have private layers. We're working on a couple of other things that we can talk about in that area, but I really want, and we do have we have it in the plans, we have design for it, that you can host a what we would term a decentralized layer, where you're hosting the data, you're hosting all of the activity. You can have your own mechanisms for rewards, but you are not, because it would be the rest of the system would be blind to that activity. That you won't participate in the economy. There might be hybrid approaches that we need to test. That, and they're in my set of notes, that we think that we could allow a decentralized group where we're not holding the data, that they could compete with everyone else, so long as it's still transparent and they're still on chain. So that people can't manufacture votes and who knows what else. But it still have to have certain levels of transparency, and that's also where you might end up with legal issues that we don't want to mess with too much. Like, say if you had a dissident group from some nation wanting to set up, in my opinion, a perfectly appropriate discussion channel so that they can go over free speech issues or something, I would support that. But I have no idea, what. Depending upon where it's hosted, whether it would be taken down or, who knows what else, right? But that's what we're attempting to do. And then there's another angle that that we've already designed for a couple of other systems, where the functional approach is that people would have the ability to, and this is already possible, we just have to put a button in place, that, let's say you really like this post and all the replies, that it's a very helpful thing to whatever you do, that you would be able to, with a single click, pull down all of that content and all of the proof alongside that content, that here's who said it, when they said it, so on. And that we can decentralize the archival bits. And we have a couple of other partnerships that we want to plug into that we think would be appropriate and make a lot of sense to feed in for the pure purpose of decentralizing that data, right? So that, if I post this here, that even if Joe goes crazy, it's still going to be in one of these places I can get to, right?
Yeah.
So those are the things we're looking at, and there are a lot of different options, and a lot of that depends on the governance, what features people want next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But it sounds like you guys have been very mindful and thoughtful about decentralization. So that's really good, and it seems like you're working to make that more and more of a priority. So I think that's really, really awesome. Do you have a hard stop, by the way? Because I know we've been going on for over an hour now.
I have something at 11:30, and I probably need 5 minutes before that.
Okay,
But,
so like 10 more minutes or so?
Probably.
Okay,
Probably
cool.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
all right.
No worries.
We'll try to wrap it up. So just generally, what is Den and or your stance on privacy, free speech, and censorship?
I'm I'm pretty radical. I don't know if I would say a libertarian, but conceptually, rabid pro First Amendment free speech, and that's because I think that's the best. The way you get the best content in politics and life and art is to not restrict it, right?
Yeah.
That that's how you get the renaissance of content, is you make it possible for people to post things that are unpopular.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like that. And you do have some angles you fall against for legality, and I would have personal morality issues with a lot of things that others might not. That, as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to watch gore sites or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
The typical things that might fall into this, but there's still space for some of those things if they are legally done. And also if you have potential protections, maybe a lair might say you have to prove that you're over 18 to join, because we discussed something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think it should be up to the lair mostly, but there might be legal constraints as well. Who knows? But free market, free information. Information as a market. I'm all about that. It's kind of a maybe the wrong term, but I'm pretty much a pure capitalist if you take it as the most basic description of what capitalism is. But it's all about real free markets, and
Mm-hmm.
We don't have real free markets in most places, but if you can approach that, it's great.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Like you guys are basically just taking the stance of, as long as it's legal and it's covered by free speech, it's good to go.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And as for archival or anti-censorship, we built a system called Eternal. So if you go to eternal.report, that you can store any text. And it started, I will say, it started as a demonstration of our interchain technology, right? That's why we put it out. You can put any text in there. You can, in fact, you can do markup and stuff like that. You can push a website in and it'll crawl the website, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you can push a tweet in and it'll pull the tweet directly from Twitter and store it with all the metadata. And the beauty with that is, we've had, people numerous times capture tweets before they were deleted, capture, various things that become really interesting. And we have a group that works with us quite a bit. They were started by a community, but it's called Eternal Archive, and they started with news and things like that. But they're building a very interesting system that uses the same tech as Den, but it's not a social system. It is a way to monetize the archival process, right? Where things that would normally be too expensive or painstaking to archive all of a sudden make sense because there's money there, and that we're working with them on that, and so it's basically to talk about this whole thing. The whole reason we want to build this is because all this history is happening, and so much of it, it's this past year, if you can just, it's amazing the amount of channels, systems, full platforms, and people have been banned and just erased, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big history guy, and if you know anything about Amenhotep IV, that they didn't even know this guy existed because I think he was a monotheistic leader in Egypt, and as soon as he died, they didn't like that, so they basically erased him from history. They walled up everything, erased his name, erased his face, and it wasn't until many years later that they, that they found modern times that they found that this character existed, and that's what's going on every day now, and with normal people. So we want as much as possible to preserve that in a way, and to let, like key to that is, on Eternal you can download that, and in Den it will be the same, and it's the same proof report that you basically can look at this data and say, no, Joe said this on this date, and it could have been a prediction that was brilliant, right? Or it could be that, I promised something, right? But the fact that it's stored there and you can hold that, even if the data went away, is a very valuable thing to me. So,
yeah, and I've always believed that, if you can control the past, then you can easily control the present, and that's a very dangerous notion to freedom in general. So yeah, that's absolutely important. Okay, so we've only got 5 more minutes. What are some cool next things in the works for Den that we should be looking out for?
Matter Boost is coming, I hope really soon, and I know it's in dev. I played with the first pass yesterday or day before. It's going to be, I don't know how understandable it will be in first pass, right? We put it out, we'll get feedback. I know that we're going to be playing with it as Den, and as DragonChain as well, putting what amount of bounties in place, boosting stuff. There are a couple of things we'll be phasing in as well with that, potential expansion of features once we kind of get stuff tested. Then tagging is in the works. I think that it's already, the back end is done, barring any changes required by front end. But the tagging system is going to be really interesting because we want to give a better tool to the lairs to help categorize content. So people in the end can say, look, I want to look at the music layer, but I only want to see metal. I don't want to see country or pop or anything else. I just want to see metal. That it'd be a way to do that. On top of the fact, in other cases, that's how we're going to let people tag and evaluate original content, as an example. That original content tends to be more valuable. So if the creator marks it original content and then someone says, oh, that's not original content, they can vote. They can vote for consensus that this isn't original content. And based upon how that consensus develops, the people who tag the content will get a part of a pool of matter every day, right? And so it's we think it's a pretty clear system that will reward good activity and disincentivize bad activity. We'll be rolling that out hopefully in the coming few weeks. We also have the next LCP, layer creation process, coming up at the middle of March that we don't know yet. We have feedback from the last one, and we don't know yet if we're going to have, we're hoping to get a couple of features built in before that, like say the internal lore use, so that you don't have to pay the Ethereum fees for every vote that you make. So we're hoping to add that. If we don't have it this time, we're going to push really hard to have it next time. We do know also that one of the other pieces of feedback was that the last contest was entirely lore based. So it was ranked entirely by lore and not consensus. And so we're in this case going to have an overlapping criteria that the top 5 voted on by lore ranking will be created, and the top 5 that have the most consensus will get created. And they might overlap, so we might only get 7 new ones, or whatever, but we're going to do something like that as well. And we're looking at better metrics. There are a couple of things we want to add into the metrics system. I want to be able to get CSV metrics to people so they can really evaluate where they're earning. We're going to get a negative downtrending pool, because I want people to start voting down content that is not really good, right? And right now it's it's a very weird political, emotional thing where if somebody gets downvoted, they take it personally, and
Yeah.
it needs to be that. Well, I get downvoted occasionally, and I'm okay if it's an emotional downvote too. But they counter, and if you're voting against the consensus for emotional reasons, you're losing, right? So it's a matter of, okay, I'm going to say this is bad content, and
because you'll
decide,
you'll earn less, right, if you vote on something that is
yes.
good but you downvote it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by the way, and it does, it's significant potential penalty. The other side of it is we're going to change some of the way that the evaluation is broadcast. That is, right now you see how much energy has been applied to every post. You can't see consensus, right? And we've wanted that there for a while, but we were working through some of the complexities of what people should see in order to not just be a sheep, right? That, if you see something already upvoted a lot and it's within the first 2 hours, right now, you're going to upvote it because it's going to go trending, or at least good chance it'll go trending. So all the energy I put in will, work out. What we are expecting to do, and we've already run this through governance, it's I think it's been approved, that we're not going to show you anything. It's going to be ranked. So if you're in the trend view, you'll see trending stuff, but you won't know how much energy or how much consensus there is in that until it either has full consensus or a certain amount of time has passed.
Yeah.
Right. So once you're in the 12th hour, then we do show you, it only got 50 upvotes and there were 3 people. Right. And so when you do that, what it does is it pins people down. It's like, okay, this is new content. I want to be the earliest to evaluate it to get to the real edge on the evaluation market. And so, I don't know. I have no idea what the rest of the world thinks about this, or the community thinks about this yet, though. So it's a beautiful thing because now I have to make my own real evaluation. I can't just, glom on and upvote it also. That I have to make a real evaluation, and we think that we're going to get more accurate evaluations then too.
Yeah.
And probably less emotional. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I know you have another call or meeting or whatever very soon, so I will let you get to that. Where can everyone go to learn more about Den, DragonChain, socials, all that good stuff?
Yes. Den.Social, obviously. There's a DragonChain lair. There's a Den lair. And then various others, Then I would also say Twitter, crypto Twitter, that we have DragonChain gang account for DragonChain. We have Real Denizens for Den. I'm at Jojo Row, J0J0R0. And that's generally where you'll find everything. We have a lot also in Telegram, but as Den builds up momentum, we're slowly pulling all of our activity and answers into Den, right? So you can still go to Telegram and still get really good info. There's a Den group in Telegram, and there's probably 10 or 12 DragonChain groups in Telegram. So
true.
There's a lot there.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Everyone, make sure to go follow him, follow DragonChain, follow Den, get on these platforms, start checking them out. I am on there. I highly recommend it. It's been a really good time. I'm also earning a lot. I track all my earnings, and I will keep sharing those monthly so everyone can see that as well. Again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks a bunch. It was great.
Awesome. All right. Cheers.
Bye.